Welcome to a new edition of Tech Man Talks Dynamics. I'm joined with Liz, Matt, and your first time on the podcast, Mark. Do you want to explain what you do at Tech Man, what your title is? First of all?
So operations manager, work in the operations team, which can be a little bit, subjective sometimes. But so we look after the cloud services, I guess.
Okay, so that's where we're going to probably change what we normally talk about on our podcast. It is around Business Central, but it's one of those services that extends out from it.
It's all things that, if you're going to run your system in the optimal way and make sure that it's protected and safe and things, there's setup around it that's really important, but that isn't actually directly in the product.
No. Correct.
And that's things that most customers will have somebody that looks after a lot of this. Some won't, but every customer needs to think about how they manage this side of their admin.
It's more your traditional IT, security,
it is,
user management.
Exactly. And if you haven't got that traditional IT role within the business, then how do you make sure that these things are considered and these things are set up and monitored and managed in the right way? And
we know security has become a really, really hot topic over the last probably 5-10 years, and it continues to be. And with that, Microsoft have, over time, Nav, as it used to be, and Navision used to have its own user creation. That was migrated and it became part of our general network. So if I had one user, my password and credentials would allow me to log into Business Central or Nav and now Business Central. But as the security's tightened up, what's changed in that, Mark? We have a couple of phrases, don't we, that we talk about here, where we've got another bunch of acronyms, which we love. DAP. I'm really struggling. DAP and GDAP.
Yeah. So I guess where this has come from then really is traditionally as a cloud service provider, where we resell a subscription. When you create a customer relationship, historically it used to inherit the role of administrator, global administrator, or delegated admin privileges.
So the relationship as in customer and we as a partner. That's the relationship.
And so any partner that wants to sell a subscription, be it 365, Office, Power BI, has to have a relationship with a customer. Okay, so it's hard to imagine how it used to be, but even 6 months ago, 12 months ago, every partner inherited the role of global administrator.
So they had a huge power to do a lot of stuff.
So in a customer where we just supplied their Business Central licenses, we had full admin
and potentially
access.
We could allow any of our staff to inherit that role of a delegated admin to all of our customers. And a customer could have 3 or 4 different partners reselling different subscriptions, and all of those partners could be global admins, and all of their staff could also be global admins.
And that's of their Azure tenants. So
the
cloud-based.
The tenancy, and anything within that tenant. So it could be Azure, could be 365, Power BI, Business Central.
Yeah.
So only, I think it was April last year, April 22, Microsoft announced it because of partner feedback. And it's only started to be enforced now. But what they're doing is taking the DAP role away and enforcing GDAP to make it more granular. So a Business Central partner can just have D365 admin, and the telephony partner can just be Teams admin, and so on and so forth, SharePoint admins.
Because previously, I guess if we went in to do something, we could impact something that
absolutely.
Office and vice versa. Someone could come and make
a lot of conflicts of interest going on there. So anybody could go in and just make a mistake, or not suggesting there's any influence award, but 3 or 4 different partners all been admins of one customer, and sometimes the customer doesn't even know that, wasn't really aware of it. So rightly so, Microsoft listened to a lot of partner feedback. And from June this year, enforced on partners to take away their admin role and make it granular. So we've gone through all that. We did that back in May. So now all of our customers, unless they want something different, we've only got the Dynamics 365 admin role.
So what does that give us then?
So we can get into the BC Admin Centre, manage the environments, manage the telemetry, the capacity, table sizes, all that kind of thing.
And does that mean every user from TechMan can log into?
Yeah, we get that control.
So when a customer said to me the other day, why is every single TechMan person in my user list?
Yeah, that's different slightly. It's
not every user. It's people that we deem
support
support the consultants,
developers. So when I support, or anybody goes into a customer's Business Central environment, a user gets created. Okay, so that's what customers are noticing. Everybody can have that because everybody by default is a support admin, so we can all get into the environment. So yeah, that's what customers see a long list now.
Yeah, but that's never taking one of their paid user licenses.
No,
it's
they've taken away so you can't see the full name now. You'd notice you don't see first name, surname. It's just, I think it's Techman Technician you see now.
Right. It used to just be a whole, just big GUI, didn't it?
It's just Techman Technician now you see. Right. So yeah, many customers didn't realise that multiple partners had full control of all the tenants. So yeah, it's much better now, much better way of doing things now. We still see customers come across some other partners who've still got other resellers as full admins, but Microsoft now is starting to pull those. If partners don't.
So if someone switch partners, is there something that you have to do to remove that pre-save, or do you switch it from one to the other? Can you have more than one if you wanted to?
Yeah, you can still have plenty. Yeah. So most of our customers will have at least us and another partner, because it could be the 365 partner or Teams partner, SharePoint partner. But they should now have granular access, and it's up to the customer really to manage that and monitor that. But really, due diligence should be the other partner to relinquish control.
So I guess there's quite a few where they've just got a full user setup called so-and-so admin or whatever they decide to call it, and just give them global admin and so that remains. Yeah.
So Microsoft on the 1st of June, well, I think it was the start of this year, new relationships were only GDAP only, but then just about now I think they're starting to tenant by tenant or region by region enforcing it. So if the partner doesn't do it, Microsoft will just take that role away. So we're seeing customers move across from other partners who've still got, like I said, delegated admin. So when we see that, we'll highlight it with the customer. But yeah, I mean, worryingly, we still see customers with no 2FA policies enforced. And
so 2FA is
two-factor authentication,
which means you would get like a phone. You get an ID. Yeah. We're all used to it in our personal lives, but. Yeah.
So again, that's nothing to do with Business Central setup.
No.
That would all be part of your Azure.
Yeah. So any customer with any cloud subscription, be it Teams, 365, Power BI, has a tenant. Customer might not know they've got a tenant, but they have a tenant. Every user who wants to access a cloud service, could be BC, could be anything. You need to have some credentials. Really, you should have 2FA enforced. So when you access that service, you get prompted for a code or a text or a phone call, whatever it is, to validate who you are, really. So
our recommendation would be that everybody sets that up, and that is the recommendation for across all
every cloud service,
not just Business Central, but any product across the whole.
Correct.
And in terms of setup and things, that's something that they should do with their existing kind of modern workplace partner, or it's a service that we can offer now that we can help them set up those.
Absolutely,
those kinds of
new tenants. It's on by default, but obviously a lot of what we're seeing is legacy tenants that have been there for years and years and years, and
so everyone should have a look into 100%. That. And if they don't have it, think about how they get that into place, because it's and
there's been some more
point of view.
I guess some more complexity added into it recently, isn't there, with basic authentication going, service to service kind of authentication. So rather than having setting up a user, let's say, to be the integration to your website, it's now a service to service, and the authentication actually is a lot more secure, but it just takes a bit more setup and kind of understanding of the back end to put that in place. And
I mean, 2FA only applies, or MFA as it's also known, or only applies to interactive user accounts. But you're right, there's another authentication type, OAuth, which is, in most cases, it's a service to a service, not a user to a service. That has its own, concerns around security. Somebody really needs to manage that. You've got client secrets. They can expire. They need storing somewhere safe. certificates. If you don't use client secrets, you use certificates. Well, you need to manage the renewal date to those certificates.
And actually, a lot of the time, the services that we're talking about are absolutely key to people's business processes, aren't they? So in terms of things like integration between your website and your ERP, websites, handheld devices, anything kind of external to Business Central that talks to it. If your security certificate expires or your or you have then everything just stops. So it's really important that somebody is managing that and somebody is understanding how that all fits together and how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right about the basic authentications. That was deprecated, I lose track now, probably October 21, I think.
Yeah, if you had that, you'd know about it by now.
Yeah, that's gone.
So that's gone.
Yeah, so anything with Business Central now that has a third-party integration, it would use OAuth. And that's managed by a service principal or an app registration. That's all part of the tenant. So again, that needs monitoring, maintaining, securing. So if you're not using TechMan as that primary Azure Active Directory tenant admin, all these things need, at least on the radar. You need to know who looks after this for you. We're seeing now again customers coming across from other partners who have got service-to-service authentication with a secret that only has a 2-year maximum lifetime. So if that expires, then something breaks. It's then a chain of events to work out. Actually, this has expired now.
And everything stops usually on a Friday night.
Yeah.
But there's nobody available to look at that till Monday mornings, which means all weekend you can't take any web orders. Yeah. It's quite serious. Yeah. It's quite there's a massive impact. And that's almost something that each customer should be doing. They should be assessing the impact of what would happen if this went wrong when they think about how they're going to manage it and the investment they're going to put into managing it.
And you talked about those client secrets, putting them somewhere safe. What do you do? Like put them in a box under your bed or something?
And Azure Key Vault really.
Was that where you keep your money? Is it, Matt?
Yeah. Azure Key Vault really is the place to store secrets. Any kind of passwords really. That's probably
it sounds quite dramatic, doesn't it? That sounds a bit.
That probably comes more under an Azure service because Key Vault is an Azure resource, as opposed to tenant management. We're talking about tenant management. But if a customer's got a Key Vault, then that'll be in their Azure subscription. Okay. Yeah.
And with GDAP being introduced, what services do we used to be able to do that suddenly have been removed? You talked about a couple of them. Any high level stuff.
Yeah, so again, it's hard to imagine how this was 6 months ago. But if we were not nominated as a primary tenant admin, we could go and reset a password, create a user, set up 2FA, reset 2FA if a customer loses their phone or breaks their phone. And we used to do that because we could help people out. Obviously, we can't now. As much as we like to, it's the right thing to do. Obviously,
protects the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
there's certain things in BC we can't do as well, isn't there? Without a global admin.
The list, the list is getting smaller, but the outstanding thing now is we can't schedule job queues. We can't create job queues without an internal BC.
You can run once, can't you? I think if on a So for testing, but we can't. And that was a security thing.
Sometimes though, I think that that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of these things the customer should understand what is going on. So actually, us setting up things like that, which could impact performance, it could impact. We don't necessarily understand what time of day these things can run. It's probably better that.
I think all of them is good practice. It's making customers aware that if there's a problem and they phone you up and expect us to do something, it's not as being awkward. We physically or technically can't do it, not physically.
So the message we're trying to get across really is if you need to at least tell us who that nominated partner is, so we can refer the caller to that partner to get that done. Or if you want us to do it, we can do it for you.
But we have to be made.
Yeah, we need to know about it. And I think a lot of the customers possibly aren't aware that this has happened.
Yeah. So the first time they're going to try and do something is when they've got a problem, and then it's going to be a long or a slower response.
I suppose as well for the customers that are migrating from older versions where they might have had it on premise and it was quite easy to administer and it was kind of very much a self-contained piece of software. It isn't anymore. It's now part of a big ecosystem of
but that's always
of different products.
But it's one of the key benefits we talk about Business Central. It's part of the Microsoft ecosystem. You can utilise all this. You get this high level of security, but with it comes extra setup or maintenance and
it's no longer just a little piece of software on its own. It's
not just a software as a subscription. It's a cloud service that we're providing, and somebody, can be us, has to manage the bigger picture really.
And obviously Microsoft see a lot of these issues, which is why they're introducing this.
Yeah.
If it was a smaller provider, a lot of the time you wouldn't get all this protection, and it'd be far worse, the implications of actually somebody getting in or damaging or getting rid of something that shouldn't be there. You mentioned it to me once, which was really interesting. You talked about the two-factor authentication where you got a phone and we're waiting for the code to come through. There was this example of if I lost my phone and I'm the admin at TechMan, what happens then? And that was a genuine issue. And if anyone's lost a phone and you can't...
Well, if anyone goes out on Saturday night, leaves the phone in the back of a taxi. I'm not saying that anyone has done that.
Everybody here.
What happened? You
don't have a phone. It takes you a while to get that set up. If from a business point of view and you needed to make changes, Microsoft have introduced a service of break glass.
Break glass, yeah. So, there's a flip side to having 2FA. If you've got one dedicated global admin and you're not relying on a partner... that guy needs to have, or lady needs to have 4 weeks holiday and get sick and lose their phone, break their phone, and how do you then get your access to your tenant then?
So how do you then?
How do you?
So there are.
That's the one most likely to leave their phone in the back of a taxi.
I've never done that.
I mean, really, that one person should have a DR documented. There are ways around it. Microsoft call it the break glass. So when it really does hit the fan, you break that glass and you can get in. There's obviously hoops to jump through because everyone can't do it. But I think it's good to have. You don't want to have too many global admins, but if you've got a partner you can trust and rely on, and also an internal admin, then that's probably a good place to be.
Yeah, I think with the internal admin, for a lot of companies, that would be one person they'd be reliant on. So
and it is
I think to have a little bit of backup to that, which is a company where you're not reliant on one person, there's lots of us that can assist. I think that's probably part of the policy that a customer should have. So most of the time they can be self-sufficient, but there's always that backup if you need it.
And a good thing with GDAP is you can, because it's granular, you can choose which partners have which manage which aspects.
So they can give us a bit.
Yeah, you don't need to give
us enough to help out if they need it.
Enough to help them out, yeah.
I think it's important though, because customers, as they're relying more and more on technology and this transformation we've been talking about for ages to digitise everything, if you're not aware of these problems and you think, well, the IT person has got their phone, and like you said, but the problem happens when they're on holiday, or you would never have thought of, well, what's the impact on my business? And it can be critical. Like you said, the certificate's expiring. If that stops you taking web orders, and it takes you 24 hours or whatever to sort out, what does that do? Not just on your day's business, but the repeat business. But I'm not going back there.
It's different, isn't it? Your DR policy used to be about taking your tape and putting it in, taking it or making sure someone take it off site tonight. That's completely different now. So it probably needs that everyone needs to review those policies and review what they would do in the event of this. And this is why we've introduced a new service to do this, because we can't do it as part of our support contract because it's not standard support. Some customers don't need it because they're covered for that. Some customers need a lot of support. Some customers probably want something in the middle where they have someone. So to charge everyone as part of the support contract wouldn't be fair. So it's just an additional service that we can now have to help people out as much or as little as they need it.
As somebody else that can do it.
And to give some advice, we would always recommend that they have somebody internally that understands this. But we're here as a backup to discuss those ideas.
And we talked about BC. This is CRM as well, I'm guessing, isn't it?
It's
anything along those lines. We've got quite a few CRM users as well that do that. Okay. Is there anything else that you think is worth mentioning around any of these changes, or things that example scenarios that we haven't covered?
It's still evolving. It still changes.
Well, that's the other thing that's difficult to manage it internally for a customer, isn't it? Is that they can't necessarily keep up to date. It's not their day job. It's our day job. Yeah. So I think I hope that we can keep on top of all this stuff and we can push information out. Yeah. I feel like though that sometimes people don't read the emails properly that we send out about this because it sounds quite techy, and they might just think, no, that's not. But it is important. This is the security of your data and your systems, and the impact is so. if we do send something out and people don't understand it, or then come and talk to us and let us explain it, because it is, it's the equivalent of going out your warehouse and leaving the door wide open, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there is on the website on the techman.co.uk, there's a blog about this. Just printed out so I could just refresh myself, but important changes to the Microsoft Partner Administrative Privileges. I'm really struggling to that. I've left my phone in the taxi last night. But there is a basic overview of what has changed. So we've put that on the blog, so it's available. You can speak to your customer engagement manager, and they'll help you out, put you in touch with Mark and his team around what this means. So we're trying our best to get that information out, but it is important that customers are aware of it. I know we covered it, I think, last year a little bit at the user day. We've got that happening again in October. No doubt there'll be some sessions around that. But we are doing our best to get as much information as we can out, and to help and make people aware of what this means. It's nothing scary, but it's just understanding it and putting the right place in place.
That's great. Thank you, Mark.
No problem.
Thanks, Mark.
And then the moral of the story, don't leave your phone in the back of a taxi.
Perfect. Okay, well, thanks everyone for contributing today to the podcast, and thanks everyone who has tuned in. Is that still a thing now? You don't have a wireless anymore, do you? Has watched this on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you're getting it from. We appreciate you listening. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon on another episode of Techman Talks Dynamics.